Hello, everyone, and welcome to American Scousers pre-match show. It's match day one for the Champions League. Yes, we're back, and it's us, your regulars, Sir Z, Gordon. Really glad that you guys can join me here. Let me start with you, Sir Z, because we were in the pre and post-match shows together last weekend. How are you doing? How are you coping? Got over it? Not quite.
No, nope, definitely not. I mean, today, hopefully, if we don't, I'll still hate football.
Right, absolutely. Well, the good thing about this packed schedule is that we don't have much time to kind of dwell on a loss. Gordon, I wasn't with you during the pre and the post match. Also, wasn't with you on the Wednesday show last week. How you doing, man? How you been?
Oh, I'm fine. It was a tough weekend, but you know what?
Right.
When we beat United 7-0, we lost the very next game 1-0. I'm pretty sure it was to Bournemouth, so I think we're all right.
Right. And it's really funny because that's a good segue to what Sir Z and I were talking about before the show started. We were talking about conspiracy theories, right? And that is one heck of a conspiracy theory there, where we absolutely smash United and then turn up forgetting how to play football the next game, which is exactly how we looked like against Forest last weekend. So, right. Match day one of the Champions League, AC Milan under the lights of San Siro. Let's talk about it, guys. Starting lineup here, two changes, right? Two changes. And two changes that we didn't necessarily expect. So let me actually start with you, Gordon. What are your first takeaways? Seeing the lineup here, concerned or what do you have?
Oh, man. One of the things that Slot said in his post-match was like, if I only started to change things when I lost, I'd only be doing the good things after losing, which is not a good thing. So the guy has a game plan. We definitely gotta appreciate that. I would have liked to see a little bit of rotation, but we always talk about, the squad's not super deep as is. So maybe there's not a whole lot of room to do a lot of rotation. There are a few absences that I thought we'd see, and a few inclusions that I didn't think we'd see. So interesting, definitely. Probably not how I would have started, but I think we're still in the phase where we got to give Slot his credit and we got to let him do his thing. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't, then we can start bitching. But I think it's still too early.
It is. It might be still a bit early, Cersei, but obviously we talked about it in the post-match show last weekend, where the team kind of looked sluggish at certain aspects in the Forest game. Pretty much the same lineup, with the exception of Costas, this is probably his token appearance, right before he just gets thrown into the bench for the next 10 games, and Cody Gakpo, who you would have thought would have started last weekend's game, but I guess better late than never. We have him here. So listen, when you saw the lineup, what was your initial reaction? Disappointed? Was this what you would have gone for? Because what I remember you saying is that you would have liked to see some rotation last weekend. Here we have minimal rotation as well. So what are your thoughts?
I think he doesn't like Maka and he wants to kill Maka, and he wants to completely just ruin his career and till he can no longer play again. So Bosley, I had a feeling he'll play because I think he had said in the press conference that he expects Sabozla to chip in more goals, and I don't know. It's just hard to try and figure him out. I mean, he changes the play at half time with Kwanzaa, and he gave his reasoning, but he still plays the same shitty players that he played for Saturday. So I don't know. So Bosla and Jota, I don't even know where to start with them two. I suppose, I don't know. Jota, I love Jota, but he just isn't first choice. I would have played Nunes for start. I think Gakpo's a smart decision. Even not Diaz has done anything wrong, but I think it's a big game on Saturday. We have.
Yes,
against,
I believe
Bournemouth.
against Bournemouth. Yeah, against Bournemouth.
Yeah. So I think Diaz great problems there. I just don't know why he didn't start Nunes today, and I don't know how Sabozza is on another spot in this team.
Right. On that note of Darwin Nunez, and by the way, before I get there, let me actually change it to a more tactically friendly image of our lineup here, because the club, for some reason, continues to persist with this numerical order. It still gets on my nerves. But obviously, Gordon, Nunez was probably the obvious choice here. considering Jota hasn't exactly lit the world on fire the first 3 games. Obviously, he had some good moments with the build-up play, scored 1 goal. But against United, he wasn't as prevalent. And against Forest, obviously, missed the chance he should have buried. Not exactly his best start of the season. Not terrible by any means, but not exactly spectacular. So this game would exactly be the prime opportunity for Darwin Nunez to come in and actually stamp his name in. What does that tell you about Darwin Nunez and Arne Slot's relationship right now? Because being fair to Darwin as well, like as much as we critique him, he hasn't necessarily had the chance to give, a proper impact. You would have thought this game would be that game.
Yeah, that's a tough one for me because the front 3 didn't really offer us much. I don't think you can point the finger at any individual player because we didn't get a lot from any of the players.
Right.
But I think even last year, and I still believe this, that with the chaos that Nunes has and what we've seen from Slot about how it looks so regimented and so tactically precise, that I don't think Nunes fits into that, and he has always been more lethal coming off the bench. And he came off the bench in a situation that needed some shakeup, and he provided none of it. But again, I think everybody was off at the weekend, so I can see why he doesn't start here because, like Sir Ziad said in the pre-match before last game, I think that was the game where you do all your rotations, and this is the game that you play all your strongest starting 11. And so I think maybe hands were tied because he had already started most of these guys at the weekend and then they were crap. So I'm not, if the circumstances were different at the weekend, this lineup would be fine with me. However, with the way that we played, only a few days ago, this is a little worrying that there's not more. And yes, you only have a certain number of options because we didn't buy this summer. And it's shocking that you don't see more rotations for this start.
Spencer is here. Hey guys, fellow American Red who just found your channel. Come on, you Reds. Spencer, great to see you here. Hit like, hit subscribe, hit all that jazz. We appreciate you here. Serzi, obviously our hands are tied, as Gordon said. We just have to work with what we have at least until January. But obviously it's quite the busy schedule we have over the next month or so, and it's quite surprising that Slot has kind of doubled down here, starting off this busy schedule, especially with the likes of McAllister and Gravenberg here, who haven't necessarily been terrible on McAllister's part. And I think bias aside, I think Gravenberg has been quite decent, but you're kind of asking for them to get their legs run off really quickly if you're going to keep playing them consecutive games and playing them roughly 90 minutes each game, because if I'm not mistaken, McAllister came off late last weekend, right? Around 85th or 80th minute for Curtis Jones. I forget. Correct me if I'm wrong there. But Gravenberg played 90 minutes again, and you'd assume he's going to be playing 90 minutes here, especially if it's a tight game. So what do you think Slot is thinking here? Is it because what these guys do on the pitch is completely irreplaceable, that whoever comes into them doesn't quite measure up to the standard? Or what do you think?
I think he's very trust you until you learn your trust type of manager. Right. And I think that's what he's going with. And I said it the other day, and I said it was naive, and I think maybe it's not that he's a naive manager. Obviously, he's proven his worth as a manager. I think he's naive to the Premier League, the pace of the Premier League, and how much toll it's going to take on these players. Because the Dutch league is, it's probably comparable to the Championship with the Premier League. I don't, it's so they play these players every game, knowing this with this schedule. I think he is showing a little bit naivety in regards to how fast this Premier League is and how fast this, the game is in England. And
right.
Yeah, to that, you've got players like Alisson and Rodri who are complaining about playing too many games. That Rodri has even come out and said, it's only a matter of time for the players start suing, the Premier League and UEFA and so forth. That obviously it's taking a toll on these players mentally and physically. And it's not like we have bad players on the bench. you look at our bench. We've got, we've still got Gomez, we've got Endo, Diaz, well, not Diaz. I mean, Nunes, Jones, like Chiesa. These are top 3, top 4 Premier League players. So he has to learn how to rotate properly.
Right. And for the record, I'm happy that Gravenberch is getting his game time, but the fact that he gets too much is just long term not good for him. He could pull something here and there and could end up getting sidelined for quite a considerable amount of time.
And these are all players that play for the international teams.
Right, exactly. Right, McAllister as well, who's basically played an eternity of football even during the offseason. So it is kind of puzzling here. And that's actually a great segue, Gordon, that Sir Z mentioned. They're looking at our bench. Obviously, we've kind of put in a lineup here that has seen some mileage. So, like, common sense, right, would dictate some subs at a certain point at the game, although granted, common sense hasn't necessarily been the running theme here on Arne's first few games here in terms of rotation. So, obviously, the obvious choice here of an impact player would be Federico Chiesa, who we'd hopefully see come in. But aside from him being the obvious choice, who do you think is probably going to come in here and be given a chance to kind of stamp out their authority in the game and sort of prove themselves to Slot?
Well, he seems like a very regimented manager, and so I would just assume the guys that we've already seen. We saw Jones come in late in the last game. I think we'd probably see him. You're probably going to see Nunes because he's favored him in substitutions. I bet Diaz comes on just because it just seems like Sir Z said, it's something he just feels comfortable with guys, and you earn your trust until you lose it. And It really also does, and this is for every manager. This is not saying anything profound or new, but it really does depend on the flow of the game as well. If we go up early, I think you see more defensive players like Endo come in, Gomez come in for some of those supporting roles, and kind of shore the game up. We saw Bradley kind of move into that right midfield or right back position and kind of push Trent in. I think we see more of that if the game kind of dictates that. But I think right off the bat, you're probably looking at Nunes coming in first, Diaz coming in first, just to get some attacking legs out there. It is concerning with the number of games, and that definitely does factor in. So it's really, he's seen these guys in training. Hopefully he has a good idea of their fitness levels. I mean, this is not just one guy, one bald-headed dude standing in the park with a coat on looking at these guys and going, how do you feel today? Mm-hmm. There's science behind all of it. So you're just hoping that, you have the right team behind you and they're making the right calls with these starts.
Right. Timuchin is here saying that, for the record, if Konate or Jota get injured, I'm going to lose. I'm absolutely going to lose it too, my friend. Surely Slot knows their injury history, which makes this all the more befuddling. And the fact that common sense is just thrown out the window. I don't know if anyone who's watching recalls the meaningless Champions League game a few years back that we threw Jota in. We lost it for a couple of months. I think it was that COVID season where there was no crowd and that was just horrible. So I don't know, man. First Champions League game, it's primed to pretty much parallel to that. So hopefully not. Salim is here with how's it going, my friend? Can't wait to see Chiesa. Hopefully he plays today. Let's talk about Chiesa, Sergi. Obviously we thought we'd be seeing him last weekend, but then now game against Italian opposition, a league that he's familiar with. When do you expect him to come in, and do you expect him to actually play on Salah's position, play central? Where do you see him playing for this team?
Actually, maybe see him coming on the 60th minute, 70th minute, and he can see him playing the number 9 ahead of Nunes. That's a piss off Nunes. And then Nunes takes up the left wing. I don't think Diaz gets onto them. I think he would take off Gakpo and play Nunes on the left, and maybe play Chiesa through the middle. But then I don't know. I don't think we can second guess him. He just plays his own game. Slot does, and we just trust him. I guess. I mean, apart from the Forest game, he had a perfect record. So I guess we just have to trust him till it breaks. I guess.
Yeah, and going back to that Forest game, I know, Sergi, we kind of talked about it on the post match. So let me ask you about that, Gordon. Obviously, a lot of disappointment there heading into this game, but did you think it was just a matter of us? Do you think it was just one of those games, or do you think there's actually more concern to be attached to how we played during that game? Because I can't recall a game where every single attack, our attacker chose the wrong decision, and those are one of those games, whether it was the wrong pass or to keep on running or to just shoot. Like, I can't recall a game specifically. So I guess my question is, how concerned are you about that performance heading into this one, or do you feel like it's just a one-off?
It's got to be a one-off. I mean, international break right when you start. They were just. It starts another conversation, which it bothers me. There was multiple international competitions over the summer. These coaches spent months with these players, right? Well, I mean, not months, but a month and a half at least, 8 weeks. Like, what do they need to? They just started 3 weeks ago. What do you need to see? Like, much more do these international coaches need to see of these players? We just saw them. They pick all the same players for the internet. It's not like this new thing where, like, oh, only 18 and 17-year-olds go and they just play a bunch of meaningless games.
Right.
Like, now that we've got this internet, another international Nations League thing going on, it befuddles everything. You just get started with a team and then you all just expand again, and then you come back and you're playing at home against like a relatively winnable game, and you just don't have the legs for it, and you spend the whole game going, we're going to get a goal. Then they hit you on the break and it's like, we don't have it. There's nothing here. The crowd's out of it. We're out of it. We don't have the legs to push on. And I think that we're going to see a little bit of struggle when we go behind, because it looked like the tactics just could not cope with going behind. Whereas like a Klopp team probably would have just gone balls to the wall and maybe gotten a tie, or at least gotten a little bit better. Because how many times have we seen that under Klopp where we spend 75 inept minutes with 70% possession, they score, and then we at least get like 5, 6, 7 shots on target and pressure the goalkeeper. And there wasn't any of that with Slot. I don't think it's anything to be worried about. I just think it was just circumstantial. 3 games in, everyone breaks again. They travel, because they're not just playing international games, but they're traveling internationally as well, which that's a huge factor. And then they come back, they barely get any time together, and then they go on a pitch. And like I said, I don't think the mindset was right. Winnable game at home, and they just dropped the ball.
I don't want to ask you, Sergi, an open old wounds there. So let me just focus on the match here. Starting with AC Milan's starting lineup. I'm not too familiar with their personnel this season, but obviously the pedigree is there. European giant, pretty much on the same level as us. And they have some decent players there, mind you, at least on paper. Granted, I believe they started out the season winless before finally breaking the duck this weekend against, I forget who they played, but they were up 4-0 in 25 minutes. So I guess that the floodgates actually started opening for them. But looking at this lineup, Sergi, do you see a particular player that you feel like is going to give us problems in this lineup? Obviously, the names are there. The Baratas, Rafael Leao, Christian Pulisic. But in your opinion, who do you think is going to give us the biggest problem in this Milan lineup?
I think the ex-Premier League players, because they're playing against another. So Tomori, Loftus-Cheek, Morata, he loves scoring against us. I hate that bastard. He really loves scoring against us. And Leao, I think he can cause problems, but I think Morata is going to be that. He's going to be the one to watch here, because he can have shit games the whole season, but when it comes to Liverpool, it just turns into freaking Haaland. I mean, on paper, they're a really good team. The keeper, that was like, I'm surprised they're struggling the way they are. But I think, any one of them, even Pulisic, he could have a messy type game today.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised considering our luck, Gordon, here. But obviously, again, not to talk too much about the Forest game but then I kind of have to, because it's our most glaring result that kind of exposes what this team is about. Looking at that game, Forest did not come to play with us, right? They had a plan to just sit back and wait for the right opportunity, which kind of was different from Slot's first 3 games where we had Ipswich Town first game of the season at their home, who wanted to kind of stamp their authority and give the fans a show. Obviously, Man United with all that, playing at their home pitch, they want to beat their biggest rivals. And Brentford, to an extent, did try and play with us, which caused their downfall. Do you feel like the fact that obviously Milan first game of the season at the San Siro, this falls right into our hands here? Like, obviously, the low block has been a weakness even in the Klopp era, but it looks like, at least from the sample size that we've seen with Arnie, it might be our Achilles heel for now. So this whole setup with facing Milan first Champions League match of the season plays into our hands. Do you think that's the case here? Or do you feel like they're kind of going to look at last weekend's game and go like, maybe we should hit these guys where it hurts?
The game at the weekend helps this immensely. If we walked away from Forest not playing well and getting another 3 points with a clean sheet, I think that this becomes a much harder task. And that loss is a wake-up call. We might look back on it and say, like, well, luckily we did lose that one, because this one is going to be tough. The San Siro is a formidable location in itself, even if the team's not doing well. This is an Anfield-esque setting for this club. It's a Tuesday night under the lights, Champions League, first opening game. The sky's the limit. Every team has the same chance right now of winning the Champions League. This is a big night for them. It's also an Italian team, and Italian teams always play a little further back. They play a little more cautious, and they're very aggressive. And we have a couple of players who do not really do well when the chips are down like that, and when they get pushed off the ball. And we don't really have a bruiser. If you look at this team, we don't really have a bulldog that like we have in the past. I mean, maybe McAllister, but I still think he's more of a skill player than a bruiser. I know he plays in that position. We're going to have to look for somebody like Van Dijk, but the problem is Van Dijk's center back. He's playing so far back, he's not going to be able to assist, Mo and Jota, who are going to be knocked off the ball relentlessly. I think the key here tonight is Gakpo. His stature, his size, the strength that he has on the ball is going to be key in that location, because I think Salah is always a target. And Salah is one of those players that if he doesn't get the calls and he's getting kicked all night, he starts losing his head and he starts getting, I mean, how many times have we seen it where he does that jump and he like throws his hands? He just gets frustrated. So I think if Gakpo shows up, it'll be a little bit easier, and that will take some pressure off of Jota and Salah early on. But other than that, it's going to be, it's going to be a gritty game.
Absolutely. And it's kind of like these games, this setup where we kind of appreciate the midfield of the past, the Wijnaldums, the Fabinhos, the Hendersons, who aren't afraid to kind of get in there down dirty and win the ball, feed the ball to our attackers, and just do the dirty work and be content with it, right? Because nowadays you got midfielders who don't want to get their hands dirty and just want to do all those silky smooth moves here. And I worry about Gravenberg, honestly, because like he's not necessarily the most physical, and he started great, but then this is the kind of game alongside Man United away, which granted he performed well, where he gets tested here, where these guys are going to get into him and sort of test his ball security, which, considering how we play, is pretty critical. Serzi and Gordon kind of jumped in. And it's a great segue to what I was going to go in and ask the two of you. And he mentioned Cody Gakpo as kind of his player to watch, the key for us to kind of get a result here. Looking at the lineup again, who do you think is going to be our key man? Obviously, that doesn't necessarily have to be a starter. That could be a guy coming off the bench who comes in and kind of gets us a good result here. Who do you have?
Well, just to echo what Gordon was saying, I think this game would have been ideal for Endo to play alongside Gravenberch and push up front. I think the player to watch is Szoboszlai, but only because to see what kind of reaction he has to having a shit game on Saturday. In regards to taking a positive impact, I think Salah will turn it around. I think you can tell the way Salah talking the Man United game and enjoying the game and whatever. He knows himself. He doesn't need to be told that he had a shit game on Saturday. I think he's going to try and, turn that around himself. Not for us, but just for himself, because this is self-pride. So I think I think Salah made the biggest difference in this game.
Yeah, and the saying goes, sometimes it's just as simple as giving the ball to your star player and letting them kind of do what they do. And hopefully that will be the case with Mo Salah. And it's great that you kind of touched on Szoboszlai there, Sergi, because he is making his 50th appearance. Wow, it's like time flies, where it looked like it was just his first appearance the other week, scoring that banger against Aston Villa. And I feel like I kind of have to get on this point here because listen guys, if we take away the first 3, 4, 5 games, right, of last season, I don't know, like it's been a very rocky road for Dom here, and I was really surprised actually that Arne Slot was so blunt about what he expected from him. Like he needs to score more goals, he needs to get more assists, which is true because again, aside from those first 5 games, he hasn't necessarily had that performance where he just stood up and made himself look counted, Gordon. So I guess where I'm going with this is how concerned are you with Szoboszlai's form? Because like again, if we're taking out those first few games last season, he hasn't necessarily kind of cemented his place in the side here.
Yeah, this is a player. They say we've seen the flashes, so we know what he's capable of. We've seen how he works in the system when it's working and when he's working, and it's beautiful. And the other thing is, you got to remember, this is Arne Slot's, second month with him, right. And you come into a club and you see this guy, and he's Hungarian, he's big, he's got the tats, he's good looking. You kind of want this guy to succeed, like as a manager, I think. And so you put him out there, and he gives you a couple good performances, and then he throws up a stinker, and everybody did. But sometimes, like these cases, especially like if Gravenberch were to have a bad game, I think it'll get the same reaction of just like this. We know this. This is the player we remember. It's not so much like it's those 3 games that he had that was just a fluke. We saw this last year. And it gets worrying, but I do think that he's got all the tools to succeed. And who doesn't want to hear, that your manager wants you to score and assist more? AKA, you want that. You're going to put him in a more attacking role, and anybody in his position is going to just love that. And if you can't succeed given those tools from your manager and the backing, then you're not going to cut it. And it doesn't matter how much we like the guy or how exciting those goals have been and those flashes of brilliance that we've seen. It's just not worth it. It's not going to work out. So I'm hoping that because he's been given the tools, that we're going to see a more like this was a fluke, and the first 3 games of this season are what to expect from Dominic.
What about you, Sir?
I think to be fair,
yeah, go ahead.
I think to be fair, he's a victim of his price tag, and I know that's not his fault. But 70 million is a lot. If you paid 70 million for McAllister and 35 million for Szoboszlai, have a different conversation. I think I would have a different opinion. And I think McAllister shows is worth more than 70 million. So I think that price tag hinders him. I don't know if that plays into his head. But what I like about Slot and Gordon was saying, like he's laid down the marker publicly. Like, I expect more goals and more assists from you. And basically, if you can't deliver, I'm going to drop you. And, and just publicly put that out there. And then it's up to Jones or whoever they're part, and earn their trust.
Right, and considering Harvey's injury, we're going to lean on Szoboszlai even more so over the coming games in that number 10 role.
Yeah.
Spencer here says, happy birthday to our gaffer, who is 46 today. He is a young guy in terms of managerial age, so hopefully many more birthdays to come and a win for him here. So as is American Scouser tradition, folks, obviously this is a pre-match, so it is warranted, but we will go into predictions. Starting with you, Sir Z, how do you feel like this game's going to turn out? How do you think? Well, what do you think is going to be the final scoreline, and who will be the scorers on our end?
I think it'll be 0-0.
I mean, you would take that.
I said 4-0 is Forest. I'm just
right. And to Gordon's question, Sir Z, would you take that 0-0? Would you be happy about that 0-0?
I wouldn't be happy about it. Yeah, I'd rather take a 0-0 than loss. So, I'm just the one person to ask. I'm just over Saturday.
Hopefully, a good result for us, so Cersei can get back his Mr. Positivity label. What about you, Gordon? Predictions for this game?
It's going to be a low score. I'm saying 2-1, probably just like Spencer. 2-1 to us. I think the loss was the kick that we need to kind of go out with a little more teeth this time and put it to him, because if Milan is expecting to go forward quickly, like, hit us on the break and then just play the game where they just sit in the back and they've watched what that does. If they can score early, that's probably their game plan, is go in, score early, then sit back and let us kind of scrap it at nothing. So if we can hit them on a counter as they're pushing forward, then we can seal up the game in a nice low-scoring game. But I'd take 0-0. Remember, this is a new format. We have 8 games. We do not have to play AC Milan again either. So we've got the opportunity to take a 1 point. A couple of 1-pointers isn't going to affect us the same way as it would in previous years. Also, opening night away from home in a formidable location with a team that we've had a lot of history with, I'd take 0-0. I'd be happy with 0-0.
Right, for sure. And I was going to say, if you gave me a 0-0 at AC Milan, I would have probably taken it all day long, regardless of how much they've struggled. It looks like they've actually finally broke their scoring duck. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's like a low scoring, but I wouldn't be surprised if the floodgates actually open and it becomes like a free scoring like basketball game here, because they do have the personnel for that, and we obviously do have the personnel for that either. But I'm gonna go to 1-1 here. I'm with Cersei. I won't be the happiest person in the world with that draw, but then at the end of the day, it's gonna be a valuable 1 point, especially considering who we're gonna be facing over the next few days. But gentlemen, will you be joining me for post match later?
I will not.
If we don't lose
today.
If we don't lose, okay, geez. So we better get a decent result. Otherwise, it's probably
I need a wellness check.
It's probably just gonna be me by myself here. But gentlemen, again, I appreciate you joining me here with the pre-match show. For all those watching, if you haven't yet, like, subscribe, all that jazz. We really appreciate it. We're at 909 subscribers, I believe, on YouTube. So the goal for us is to reach 1,000. So every like, every subscription is very helpful. But that will be for us. Tune into the post-match show, hopefully, that we're going to be having. If I have more than one person going to be joining me in there. But if there is nothing else, gentlemen, I appreciate you joining us. For everyone watching, appreciate you tuning in, and we will see you guys later. Up the Reds.